Buongiorno. I know that international comparisons like PISA are very familiar to you. You find something about it every day in the Italian newspapers. Now, they tell us how schools look today, what goes well, what goes not so well. But international comparisons do much more than that. They tell us not only how the world looks today, but they tell us how the world could look like. What do the most advanced schools, the most advanced teachers, the most advanced education systems show is possible to achieve? And that's what I want to focus on in my presentation this morning. Talk about what the most rapidly developing education system have done and what they're currently doing. This is just a map of the countries that we have covered with PISA. It's not yet complete. It's not covering every country in the world, but most of the industrialized countries like Italy are part of this. We did our last assessment in 2012, testing around 500,000 students. And one thing that is important is that PISA is less concerned with whether students can just reproduce what you taught them. Instead, PISA tries to look at whether students can extrapolate from what they know, whether they can use what they have been taught in new situations. And that's a very important angle, because the world economy no longer rewards people for what they know. Google knows everything. The modern world rewards people for what they can do with what they know, and that makes a big difference. So that's the focus of this assessment. And then, of course, we collect a lot of data on the context from which students come, the families they come from, the learning environment they're in, the school context, and all of it, so that we understand what makes education systems succeed. And the models, the statistical models that we have today have become very, very powerful. We can account for about 85% of the performance differences among schools. So we do not only understand how schools perform, but we actually have very powerful models to explain why schools differ. Just sort of a bit on the rationale of the PISA assessment. This shows you how the demand for skills has evolved over the last years, last decades. You can see, for example, we need fewer people who earn their living with manual labor, no? Because machines do those kinds of things better than people. But the steepest decline in the demand for skills is no longer in manual labor. It's in what we call routine cognitive skills. The kind of things that are easy to teach, the kind of things that are easy to test, are also the kind of things that are easiest to digitize, to automate, to outsource, and they're disappearing fastest from our labor markets. And there's no secret to this. This is because those kinds of jobs can be done best by computers. A rapidly changing world. The kind of things that are easiest to teach are also disappearing fastest. We see increases in the demand for skills in what we call non-routine analytical skills. Your capacity to creatively use knowledge. Well, we're trying to do it with PISA. But also we see rapid increases in the demand for interpersonal skills. Your capacity to interact with others, relate with others, communicate, collaborate, compete. Those kinds of skills. And we're not yet able to measure them in the PISA context. That's still a big gap. In 2015, we're going to have our first assessment of interpersonal skills. But it's still sort of in the future. But what you see on this chart is a rapidly changing world in the kind of things that are making people successful. And we need to measure education today against these demands of the future.